All right, you know what? Let's just start there because I think everybody's mood is there on Aiden Hutchinson. And we're going to talk about the good because there's a lot of good with this football team. But I think for a lot of Lions fans out there, you sit there and you say, okay, this is a Super Bowl championship team. This is a team that can go out there and accomplish all of its goals. If there's one guy on the offense that you cannot lose, that's Jared Goff. If there's one guy on the defense that you cannot lose, that's Aiden Hutchinson, and they lost him. And I think it was a collective gasp, and the Lions put out a statement earlier today saying Aiden Hutchinson underwent successful surgery to repair a fractured tibia and fibula at Baylor White Medical Center in Irving, Texas last night. Hutchinson will return to Detroit this week and is expected to make a full recovery. There is no timeline for his return to play at this time. It was a gruesome injury. It was just kind of like his leg whipped around Penei Sewell's leg and snapped in half like a MMA fighter would that kicks. And it was so bad that they didn't even replay it on the broadcast yesterday, Anson. But I think from Dan Miller's reaction on the radio play-by-play to Kevin Burkhart's reaction on the television play-by-play to everybody on the field coming up and saying, patting them on the shoulder pads and the head. That's just a tough pill to swallow.
It's really the most awful outcome from a fantastic win that you could ever hope against, and that's what happened. I mean, if you've been around long enough to remember Joe Theismann, the NFL and other sports leagues, they have stopped showing this stuff. And when it happened, we were at the watch party. We were all kind of wondering what it was. We saw him taking off his glove. We thought maybe at first it was his arm. We had to go to Twitter and freeze things, slow things down just to find out what had happened. But, I know we talked about starting this thing off on a positive note, not going right into Hutch.
Well, we're going into it, though,
yeah, we're knee deep, that's for sure. The thing about it is the prognosis at this point, the fact that he's already being said he's going to make a full recovery. Listen, this kind of an injury is something that could end a career.
Yeah.
So I think that as hard as this is for Lions fans to swallow, the fact that the prognosis for the future is positive and that we haven't lost this young star, a guy on his way to being the Defensive Player of the Year, it's fantastic news on a really hard day.
I'm still sick to my stomach. I watched Joe Theismann. I watched Lawrence Taylor snap Joe Theismann's leg in half. That was a compound fracture, I think. This one isn't. It's a cleaner fracture. I didn't realize it was both the tibia and fibula until I read the Lions statement. Everyone was saying it's the tibia. We're going to have Dr. Pearson here. He could explain to us a little bit more about this, a lot more. But it took the greatest game that I have ever watched as a Detroit Lions fan. All the joy I had. I mean, I was walking around like a rooster that game. I was screaming, I love this team. I asked my wife and my kids. I was just ecstatic. We were eating dinner at halftime and came back. They're okay with me going back and forth to the TV. Come back, and I saw what I saw, and I had no words. And everything in my body just left. And I hardly watched the second half. Hardly. Matter of fact, I had it on in the background, and I went in my office, and I was doing some work on the computer, and I was just listening to the game. And every time I heard the Lions were ready to score again and they pull a trick play, I went and watched. But I had nothing left. I was completely gassed. So it took the most joy that I ever had watching a Lions game. And I watched Barry Sanders play. And I watched last year's playoff run. Last night's game was better than the playoff run that they had last year because you saw them. Everything was coming to fruition. As I said earlier in the week, last week, I said the Lions are going to kill this team. They're going to slaughter Dallas. And I said they're going to get a touchdown to Dan Skipper. They're going to get a touchdown to any offensive lineman. They all deserved it from what happened last year on that Saturday night football game. And it just took everything out of me. Now, I still think they're a phenomenal team. And I don't think anyone's going to beat them as far as at the end. I think it's going to be the Ravens and the Lions. That's my Super Bowl. I'm sticking with it. But to lose a guy like him, it's tragic for him because he was going to probably be the defensive player of the year the way he was playing. And I know it's only week 6, but the guy was ready to really unleash it. J.J. Watt style, unleash it. And it breaks my heart that he's not going to be part of this team on the field going forward.
There's definitely a personal element to this injury and obviously a football element to this injury. The personal side, look, Aiden Hutchinson, Dearborn Divine Child, born and raised, Michigan legacy, Michigan Wolverine, Detroit Lion, what have you. Guy is like royalty in the state of Michigan and certainly in Metro Detroit and in the city of Detroit. And then there's the football part of it where he is the single most important player on your defense, bar none, not even close. And how do you lose a guy like that and continue to be a relevant defense? Take the best player off of any defense and show me how they're barely relevant. It's really tough. And, you know, one of the things that people have not talked about today, this isn't just Aiden Hutchinson. The Lions lost Marcus Davenport earlier this year as well. Yeah. So your 2 starting defensive ends that you came into the season with are now both out. And both out either for the season or a very long time. And so how do you go about surviving that? Not only surviving, but thriving on that. Because this team, like you said, Maz, I still do believe in this team. I still do believe in the guys that they have to get them through the next couple of weeks. But you absolutely have to go out there and acquire somebody on the outside. That is an absolute must. Brad Holmes owes that to the players in that locker room, and he owes that to the people of Detroit because you are so close to this Super Bowl, you can taste it. You can't let one injury determine the course there of the entire season. And, by the way, it is wholly unrealistic to believe that any team in the National Football League isn't going to go through some type of major injury in any particular season. And the Lions, for the most part, got away with it last year. I would contend to you that they did have a major injury last year, and that was C.J. Gardner-Johnson, who, by the way, was signed in the offseason to be that guy in the defensive backfield as a safety and to help guys like Brian Branch and to help a weaker cornerback group. And he got hurt in week 2. And I'm not comparing C.J. Gardner-Johnson to Aiden Hutchinson and what they do, but what I am saying is it is unrealistic to believe that your football team is going to play a clean season, and I'm talking clean by way of injury. And you know what? This is the NFL. San Francisco has survived. Pittsburgh has survived.
KC.
Kansas City has survived. Good teams, great organizations survive injuries like this, and I anticipate the Detroit Lions doing just the same.
Well, and the Lions are in a position this season with the defense, the restacked new defense of the Detroit Lions, a very deep secondary. This is a defense that can handle this kind of a loss. Last year, this probably would have cost them the division. They've got guys that they can bring in. But, you know, to Maz's point, what you talked about, this was one of the greatest wins we've ever experienced as Lions fans.
Great point.
This game was on their calendar all offseason, not just for the team, but for every single fan after what happened in Week 17 last year.
And what always happens in Dallas.
Yes, no doubt. But I got to say, man, and I'm not trying to turn into SOL here. You asked me in the offseason, what could prevent this team from a Super Bowl run and winning the division? And it would be being the Lions. And not to say that the Lions are doing anything on the front office or we're seeing anything on the field, but 1991, best team we got ever. Mike Utley, lost. Following season, we're supposed to go back and do it again. Eric Andelsek, killed by a semi in his front yard. 1997, we make the playoffs. Reggie Brown, broken back. And now our greatest team that we have ever had in Detroit, and we lose, like you said, the one guy on the defensive side of the ball that you cannot lose. However, what I saw out of that team after he went down was a resilient, gritty team that won not only just for the guy that went down, but because they were supposed to. They didn't let up 21 points and look lost and caught in a fog. They went out there and handled business. I expect them to go out there and do that week in and week out. And yes, Ryan, this team is going to go out and make a move. Now, I know there's a lot of Max Crosby fantasies out there. What we're probably going to see fit with this team is a budget deal with maybe 2 or 3 guys that come in, and not one man can ever fill the hole of Aiden Hutchinson. It's going to be a group thing. It's going to be a couple of signings, and it's going to be the rest of this deep defense that we finally have.
Listen, when I saw that injury, there was still, 12 minutes to go in the
third quarter.
Third quarter. And I said to my kid, I'm like, oh, my God, man, I hope they could, finish this game, at least keep their foot on the gas. But you know what? They did, because it happened right then and there. So your adrenaline is going. What I'm worried about is we got the Vikings next week. And I know it's not the end of the season, guys. We got the Vikings at Minnesota. They're undefeated, coming off a bye. By the way, the Lions, 1.5 underdog already. Vegas already makes the Vikings 1.5 favorite. I know they're the home team, but the Vikings are not the Lions. So Vegas already knows there's going to be a drop-off. You're not going to see 47 points put up against Minnesota. You're just not.
Nope.
So if we get punched in the mouth, hopefully you come back. They haven't lost 2 games in a row in 2 years, whatever it is. But there's going to be a lull now. There's no way you can keep the team going. And you're going to hear from Dan Campbell and the rest of the guys here soon. There's no way to keep that adrenaline pumping until the team settles in. It's a tough week next week against Minnesota. I wish we played Tennessee, but we're playing Minnesota. And they can get a 2-game lead on you real quick here. And I hope it don't happen. I hope the Lions can keep their foot on the gas. They're better than the Vikings. They're better than the Packers. They're better than the Bears. They're in the best division in football, bar none. We'll talk about that as well. But that's what I'm worried about.
Yeah, and
there's going to be a lull, guys.
Well, we hope it's not that bad of a lull. And it's funny, I've been on now my 3rd show of the day, and we haven't even talked about Carlton Davis getting cleated in the head right after the Hutch play.
That's a good point.
But, yeah, this defense can't afford any more injuries. But, we keep talking about outside, people coming in to help us. But it's also going to be incumbent on the guys here to step up. I'm looking at Levi O, maybe even a James Houston sighting. We haven't seen him all year. Josh Pascal, maybe Mekhi Wingo, who they played on the edge, here and there. It's going to be incumbent on the guys in-house to also step up, because this missing Hutch, that's such a big blow to this defense.
I don't believe there's KG. I totally agree with you. It is going to be incumbent on the guys in the room right now to get them through the next couple of weeks. But I do think you need some help, and I don't believe. I heard Adam Schefter on Pat McAfee today. He said the Raiders, I don't believe, are trading Max Crosby, and the Browns, I don't believe, are trading Myles Garrett. Those 2 guys are totally off the table. Stop dreaming. And
he's been wrong before.
He has been wrong. I'm just saying, if you're the Raiders or if you're the Browns, okay, this isn't acquiring a guy. They know you're desperate. So the asking price just got raised a million times
Cost you a
over.
1st-round pick.
Multiple.
I don't know about multiple.
Multiple.
Maybe multiple.
I think multiple.
You have to pick up his deal, too.
If you're telling me that I got to pick up his deal in a 1st-round pick, I mean, it's done last night.
Yeah.
You start talking about 2 1s and a 2 or 2 1s and a 3 and stuff like that, I'm a little iffy.
Me too.
I'm a little iffy on that.
Did you see how he exited the game last night? Max Crosby?
Yeah, but he went on Twitter and said that was a love push. He loves that guy, and that was not anything.
Gotcha.
He said, don't even start that stuff on Twitter last night. He said, don't even start that stuff. Max Crosby pushed one of his coaches.
Just like Robert Saleh and Aaron Rodgers?
Exactly.
Okay, I'll believe it.